Welcome back to Good Things Utah, everybody. The law is difficult to understand when it comes to alimony and child support. We have two experts here today to answer all of our questions. Cassie Medura and Jared Jennings from Jennings and Medura. Welcome, you two.
Thank you.
To the show. Can we start with the most basic question? What is the difference between alimony and child support?
Well, as I see them as really kind of two sides to a similar coin. They share a relationship for sure, but there's definitely some things that are in opposite. For example, child support is not taxable income to the person who's receiving it, nor is it a deduction to the payor. Alimony is just the opposite. Alimony is going to be taxed to the person who receives it, and it's going to be an above-the-line deduction for the person who's paying it.
And the purpose of child support, obviously, as you can imagine, is to support the child. That money is, in theory, to go for the children. Alimony is also known as spousal support. So that support goes to the spouse. Who's ever receiving the money is the recipient spouse. So one is support for the child and one is support for the parent.
Yeah. Is it a big issue here in Utah? I noticed on the list here that you're saying child support, it is 15% that women also have to pay child support, 15% of the population, not necessarily ours. But is it an issue here in Utah?
This is kind of a fun fact that, nationwide, about 15% of the payors happen to be women. I think that you're seeing more and more with the rise in men really fighting for custody and more parent time. You are seeing an increase in the number of women who are ending up having to pay, and also because we're seeing an increase in women who are working in the workplace and their primary
because
wage
they've got careers.
What is child support supposed to cover? What is that supposed to pay for?
Well, that's interesting. Most people think if you get child support, then you have to pay the money to, say, soccer fees, or you have to put the kid in piano lessons. Right. Actually, though, there's a presumption that if a party that receives child support gets that money and uses that money for basically any living expense, that is legitimate. And the court is never going to second guess if a man or a woman receives child support and it goes into their pot and they pay their rent and they buy food and they buy gas. Right. That's considered fine. A lot of people get upset about that and say, well, hey, I'm paying child support. I want it just for a backpack and school fees.
Yeah, but that's being silly.
But that's just not how it works. So
it's also not, I also look at these types of issues that it's about the children.
Well, absolutely.
You chose to bring them into the world.
Absolutely.
You have a responsibility.
And you chose to get divorced, so...
But that gets lost in there sometimes, doesn't it? What's the average child support payment made in this country per month?
On average, it's about $430
Shockingly low.
Is that what you're saying here in Utah? Is that about...
Utah actually is on, nationwide, Utah's a little bit on the low side, relative to states like California and New York.
Well, I would assume it's because of income.
Well, that's an interesting thing, is that there is no national guideline for child support. Every state comes up with its own set of guidelines, its own set of rules.
But should there be a national guideline?
There's arguments for and against. So there are pros and cons.
Interesting. 30% of all custodial parents never receive 1 cent of the child support legally due to them.
Really?
Even if they have a court order.
Why?
I mean, a court order is it's enforceable and it has teeth, but at the end of the day, it's a piece of paper, and people choose not to work. Some people say, I would rather not work and have no income than pay child support.
Yeah, some people just go completely off the grid.
And it simply can't be collected.
What do you do? Like, I can't understand. What do you do if your husband or wife who is having to pay child support, if they just don't do it? Do you just go, enough, I've given up?
A lot of people do.
I think that's where you get a lot of those people that are in the 30% are people that are they're too fatigued with the process. Now, ultimately, what can happen to a person is there's fines, fees, sanctions, including jail time. There's actually criminal non-support statutes.
There's also criminal charges that can be brought. It's rare, but somebody can be criminally prosecuted for failure to pay.
How long can you go without paying until something like that would take effect?
Well, the lesser sanctions, like you can be held in contempt, the court can assess fines against you, those things can happen pretty quickly.
Fines, fees, judgments.
Judgments can be entered against you. Before you go to jail, I mean, a lot of times it will never happen. But, I mean, we're talking, you've got to be years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
That's what I was going to ask you. If you go into court and the judge says, okay, you haven't paid for 12 months, and then that person then makes one payment, does the ball start rolling again, or are they held accountable continually every time they go?
Held accountable continually.
More of the latter, and what judges will oftentimes do in those situations, and commissioners as well, they'll enter the judgment, enter a sanction, and even a jail time sanction, say, now I'm going to stay, you know, all but maybe 5 days of this jail time sanction. I'm going to have these fine gentlemen over here take you downstairs and show you the inside of a cell for a few days and kind of give you a taste of what you're looking for. And then we're going to have you come back and see how you did. And oftentimes you'll have review hearings, and it'll go on for a couple of months, and we'll bring you back and see what kind of progress you're making. And the less progress is being made, the more and more time you're going to spend in jail.
Sometimes you need to bring out the big stick. I'm sorry. You both chose to bring this children in. You need to be responsible.
These two shared with us these 10 interesting facts. We only got to a couple of these that you guys deal with all the time, so we're going to put them on our website. Don't forget to go to goodforutah.com/GTU. That will also give you all the information about Jennings and Medura. Their phone numbers on your screen, and they will also be on our website if you have any more questions. Thanks, you two.
Thanks so
we
much.
need 10 minutes.
Yep, we need 10 hours for this topic.